At our wedding reception, my husband danced with his mother while she whispered, "You'll always be mine first, not hers." He smirked and nodded. I picked up the mic and said, "Let's show everyone the wedding gift you two gave me." Their smiles faded as the entire room saw the truth. We got married at a gorgeous historic venue in Savannah, Georgia. The kind of place with exposed brick walls, dimly lit chandeliers, and an air of old money charm. It was elegant, tasteful, exactly how I imagined my wedding would be. Everything had gone smoothly, at least on the surface. Brandon and I had been together for 4 years. He was charming, well-spoken, and always knew exactly what to say. When we first started dating, I thought he was the most thoughtful, caring man I had ever met. He would plan weekend trips, surprise me with little gifts, and always make me feel like I was the center of his world. But there was always something off about his relationship with his mother, Margaret. I should have paid more attention. Margaret had a way of inserting herself into our relationship, always under the guise of being helpful. If I planned a date night, she would call with a fake emergency and guilt-trip Brandon into leaving. If I cooked dinner, she would remind him how no one made meals like she did. If I mentioned a future together, she would give me a tight-lipped smile and say, "We'll see about that." It was small things at first. Things I brushed off. Looking back, I was an idiot. The reception was in full swing. Guests were laughing, drinking, and enjoying themselves. I was sitting at the sweetheart table, watching everything unfold, my fingers wrapped around a champagne flute. Then, the DJ announced it was time for the mother-son dance. I was expecting something sweet. I mean, it's tradition, right? A sentimental moment before the party really starts. Instead, I got a front row seat to something that made my stomach turn. Margaret walked up to Brandon, a smug little smile on her face, and he took her hand without hesitation. The music started, a slow, soft tune, and they began to sway. I watched as she leaned in, pressing her lips dangerously close to his ear. She whispered something. At first, I thought I imagined it. But then I saw his reaction. He smirked. And then he nodded. Every hair on my body stood on end. My blood ran cold. I didn't know what she had said yet, but I knew in that moment it wasn't normal. It wasn't some sweet, nostalgic memory or a mother telling her son how proud she was. It was something twisted. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. The room blurred, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses turning into white noise. I needed to know what she had said. So I waited. When the song ended, Margaret pulled away first, her nails lingering on his shoulder, her expression smug. Brandon patted her hand like she was his partner, not his mother, and then turned to grab a drink. That's when I saw my chance. I slid out of my chair and made my way toward Margaret, keeping my face neutral. "Beautiful dance," I said. She tilted her head, eyes twinkling like she knew something I didn't. "It was special," she said softly. I forced a smile. "What did you say to him?" Her smile didn't fade. If anything, it grew. "You'll always be mine first, not hers." It was a whisper. A warning. A fact. She wanted me to know. She wanted me to hear it. She wanted to see the moment my heart shattered. And Brandon? He didn't just hear it. He agreed. I should have walked out right then and there. But I didn't. Because I had something she didn't know about. I had proof. And I wasn't about to let them get away with it. I straightened, smoothing my dress, keeping my expression neutral. Margaret thought she had won. She thought she had played her hand perfectly. She had no idea that I was about to flip the entire game. I took a slow breath, turned toward the DJ, and grabbed the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice steady, my heart pounding. "Before we continue the celebration, I just want to share a little wedding gift my husband and his mother gave me before the wedding." The laughter died down. Conversation stopped. The entire room turned to look at me. Brandon, standing near the bar, froze. Margaret's face twitched. I lifted the remote control in my hand, the one I had tucked into my bouquet. The one connected to the massive projection screen behind us. Their faces drained of color. I clicked play, and the entire wedding hall saw the truth. I pressed play. At first, there was silence. Then, the screen behind me lit up. The reception hall, once filled with laughter, now felt like it had been vacuum sealed. Everyone turned to the massive projection screen at the front of the room, eyes narrowing in confusion. Brandon stood frozen near the bar, drink in hand. His face went pale. His mother, Margaret, sat at the nearest table, her hand gripping the tablecloth so tightly her knuckles turned white. Because they knew. They knew what was coming. The video started rolling. The footage was grainy, captured by the tiny security camera I had planted myself, something neither of them knew about. The screen flickered to life and suddenly, we weren't at the wedding anymore. We were in Margaret's house. More specifically, in her kitchen, a place I had always hated stepping foot in because she made sure to remind me, over and over again, that it was her space. Brandon was there, leaning against the counter. His hands were shoved in his pockets, his posture relaxed. Margaret stood across from him, holding a glass of wine, swirling it slowly like she had all the time in the world. "You don't have to go through with this, you know," she said, her voice soft, syrupy, the way she always spoke when she was manipulating him. Brandon sighed. "Mom, we've been over this." "Have we?" she challenged, tilting her head. "Because I don't think you understand. Once you marry her, things change. And I don't think I like that." Brandon let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "It's not like that. You're still my—" Margaret cut him off, stepping closer. "Am I?" She set her wine glass down and reached up to touch his face. Her nails dragged down his cheek, lingering just a second too long. I heard people in the wedding hall gasp. Some of my bridesmaids covered their mouths. Margaret's expression in the video was sharp, almost hungry. "I raised you. I built you. She doesn't know you like I do," she whispered. "She never will." Brandon exhaled sharply, as if this wasn't the first time they'd had this conversation. As if this was a normal thing between them. Then came the worst part. "You'll always be mine first," Margaret purred. "Not hers." And then, on the screen, in front of everyone at my wedding, my brand new husband smirked and nodded. "I know." The entire hall erupted. Gasps. Whispers. Chairs scraped against the floor as guests shifted uncomfortably, horrified by what they were seeing. Brandon lunged toward me. I stepped back, holding up a hand. We're not done yet," I said. "Because this was just the beginning." Brandon was breathing hard, his hands in fists at his sides. "Where the hell did you get that?" he demanded, his voice low, dangerous. Margaret shot up from her chair, wild-eyed. "You sneaky little—" I cut her off. "Sit down." My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room. People were still glued to the screen. Because the video wasn't over. The footage shifted. A new clip. A new setting. Brandon again this time, in a hotel room. But he wasn't alone. I heard people gasp again as a woman walked into the frame. Not me. Not his mother. Someone else. The woman was tall, brunette, stunning in a cold, effortless kind of way. She was wearing a silk robe, her nails perfectly manicured. I knew exactly who she was. Brandon's ex. And here's the part that still haunts me. She walked right up to him, wrapped her arms around his neck, and kissed him. Deeply. Like she'd done it 1,000 times before. The wedding hall exploded into chaos. Shouting, screaming. Margaret collapsed back into her chair, her face drained of blood. Brandon looked at the screen, then back at me. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I turned back to the microphone. "And there it is," I said. "My wedding gift." I dropped the mic. People started standing. Some were filming. My maid of honor ran up to me, grabbing my arm, whispering, "Are you okay?" I was. Because for the first time in 4 years, I finally saw it all clearly. Brandon wasn't just a cheater. He wasn't just a mama's boy. He was both. And I was about to make sure he paid for it. Silence. For one long second, it felt like the entire room had stopped breathing. Then, chaos. Gasps. Murmurs. The sound of glasses clinking against tables as people turned to each other in shock. Some guests had their phones out, recording. Others covered their mouths, their eyes wide. Margaret had gone stiff, her lips parted slightly as she stared at the screen, eyes darting back and forth between the footage of Brandon and his ex. Brandon, on the other hand, moved. He lunged forward, reaching for the mic, for me, for anything that could stop this from happening. But I was ready. I stepped back and let the screen speak for itself. Because the video wasn't over. The recording continued. Brandon and his ex weren't just having a casual fling. Oh no. It was so much worse. "I just don't get it," his ex said, brushing her fingers along his jaw. "You're marrying her, but you still come back to me." Brandon smirked. "You know how it is. She's safe." Safe? Safe? My chest tightened, my hands curling into fists at my sides. "She doesn't get you like I do," his ex continued, trailing a finger down his arm. "She never will." Brandon sighed dramatically. "She's just convenient." The room erupted. Margaret whirled to face him. "Brandon," she snapped, her voice shaking. Brandon froze. His mother looked horrified, not at the cheating, no, but at the fact that he had chosen someone else over her. This was the moment the control she thought she had over him cracked. "You said she wasn't a threat." Margaret hissed under her breath, her fingers gripping his arm so tightly her nails dug into his skin. Brandon yanked away from her, his face twisting. "Are you serious right now?" It was like the spell between them had broken. I watched how they fell apart in real time, their web of lies and manipulation unraveling in front of everyone they had tried to fool. But I wasn't finished. I turned back to the guests. Now, I know what you're all thinking, I said, my voice louder, cutting through the rising tension. How did I know to set this all up? How did I know to plant cameras? More whispers. More wide eyes. I smiled. Because there was one last video. I grabbed the remote again and clicked to the next clip. The screen flickered. A new setting appeared. It was a dimly lit restaurant, a private dining room with a long wooden table. Expensive wine bottles lined the shelves in the background. And there, sitting side by side, were two people, Brandon and Margaret. The audience fell into stunned silence. In the footage, Brandon swirled a glass of whiskey in his hand, looking frustrated. She's starting to ask too many questions, he muttered. Margaret leaned in. Then you need to control her. Brandon shook his head. She's not stupid, Mom. She's going to figure it out eventually. Margaret's fingers tightened around her wine glass. Then do what your father did, she said softly. A wave of horror spread through the crowd. Because Margaret's husband, Brandon's father, was dead. Car accident. At least, that's what everyone had been told. Brandon exhaled sharply in the video. That's different, he mumbled. Margaret's voice was low. Is it? The room exploded. Margaret screamed, lunging forward, trying to turn off the projector, but my bridesmaids were already blocking her path. Brandon's face turned into a mask of pure terror. Because now, everyone knew the truth. Not only was my husband a cheating liar, but his mother had gotten rid of his father, and she had considered doing the same to me. I turned back to them, feeling nothing but a cold, sharp calm. Now, I said, tilting my head. Does anyone want to explain that? Margaret's breathing was ragged, her eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. She wasn't used to being the one under scrutiny. Brandon just stood there, motionless, like he had disconnected from reality. His face was drained of color, his hands trembling at his sides. The whispers turned into shouts. Is that real? Did she just admit to killing her husband? Oh my God, what the hell is wrong with them? I stood tall, microphone still in my hand, letting the moment sink in. And then, Margaret snapped. She turned to me, eyes burning with hatred, voice trembling with rage. You sneaky little beat-ch. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Some people stepped back. Others stepped forward, ready to intervene. Brandon flinched at her words, but for once, he didn't defend her. I let out a soft laugh. Calm. Controlled. Deadly. You don't like it when people see the truth, do you? I said. Margaret's fists clenched. Brandon finally found his voice. This isn't what it looks like, he stammered. I wasn't actually. I turned on him so fast, he shut up instantly. Which part, Brandon? I asked, tilting my head. The part where you let your mother control you? The part where you cheated on me? Or the part where you sat in a restaurant while she basically planned my accident? His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Margaret let out a snarl, pointing a shaking finger at me. You've ruined everything. You think you're so smart, but you don't understand how this family works. I think I understand perfectly, I cut in. You controlled your husband, and when he stopped listening, you got rid of him. I turned my gaze to Brandon. And you? You were next in line. The next little puppet. Brandon's face twisted in horror as he realized what I was saying. I saw the moment it hit him. Oh my God, he whispered. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of losing me. Not fear of being humiliated. Fear of her. Margaret's face went cold, her expression unreadable. I turned to my guests, my friends, my family, his family, people who had come here to celebrate a wedding, only to witness something out of a crime documentary. You all saw it, I said, my voice steady. If anything happens to me, you'll know exactly where to look. Margaret let out a sharp laugh, but it was forced. You think you're clever, she said. But no one is going to believe you. I raised an eyebrow. They just watched the video. They already do. She turned wildly, scanning the room. And that's when she saw it, the cameras. People filming. Recording. Streaming. This wasn't just a family scandal anymore. This was evidence. Brandon suddenly lurched forward, grabbing my wrist. Please, he whispered. You don't understand. She won't let me go. She never has. She never will. And for a brief, fleeting moment, I saw real terror in his eyes. The groom at his own wedding reception. Begging me to save him. Not from me. From her. Margaret's face twisted with fury, her grip tightening around her wine glass. You weak little boy, she hissed at him. You think she's going to help you? She just destroyed your life. Brandon let go of my wrist like he'd been burned. And then, in front of everyone, Margaret did something I will never forget. She raised her hand to slap him. But this time, he didn't just stand there. He caught her wrist midair. The room fell into silence. Brandon stared at her, his entire body shaking. "You don't control me anymore," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Margaret's breath hitched. For the first time, she looked afraid. And then, the final blow. The real twist in all of this. Someone in the crowd stepped forward. A man. Older. Gray hair. Familiar. Margaret turned ghost white. Because standing in front of her, alive and well, was a man who should have been dead. Her husband. Brandon's father. The man she had supposedly buried years ago. Gasps. People whispering. Some filming. Margaret stumbled back, gripping the chair beside her for support. "You," her voice broke. Brandon's father stared her down, his face unreadable. Surprised, Margaret couldn't move. I turned to Brandon. His eyes were wide, his entire body shaking. "Dad?" His father finally looked at him. "I wanted to come sooner," he said. "But I had to make sure I had proof of everything." Margaret collapsed into the chair. Silent. Defeated. The truth was simple. She hadn't killed her husband. He had faked his own death to escape her. And now, after years of hiding, he had come back. To finish what I had started. The police were called. Not just for the threats against me, but for years of uncovered fraud, abuse, and control. Margaret was taken away, screaming. Brandon? He just stood there, watching everything fall apart. I don't know if I felt pity for him. Or just relief. But I did know one thing. I wasn't going to be his mother's replacement. And I sure as hell wasn't going to be his backup plan. So, when he turned to me, eyes glassy, voice shaking, and whispered, "Can we talk?" I smiled, picked up the hem of my wedding dress, and walked out. Because this wasn't my problem anymore. I got the marriage annulled. Brandon moved far away, probably to escape the wreckage of his family. Margaret? She ended up exactly where she belonged. And me? I started over. No drama. No secrets. No crazy mother-in-laws. Just peace. And honestly, it was the best wedding gift I ever could have given myself.